So, well, how you doing, JD?
I'm doing wonderful, Dr. Ping. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. So, well, actually, we met just a couple weeks ago,
Yeah, that's right. I
kind of
mean,
in person. I kind of know about you on Facebook.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
same. I've heard your name many times actually, because I remember you from when you ran for school board a few years ago.
Really?
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I know Dr. Ping. Dr. Ping is well regarded with the people that I'm associated with. So
Oh, that's
it
great.
was a pleasure to meet you, in person a few weeks ago. So
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So that was 2016.
yeah.
At that time, I was more concerned about the quality of education, and now now we have something different.
Yeah, I think the quality of education is still obviously an issue, but I think, yeah, it's morphed into a much larger
Right.
overarching issue that we're dealing with now
Yeah,
too.
it's kind of like we're trying to put out fire, and then the roof kind of is collapsing on
That's a good
us.
analogy. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, what made you actually decide to set up your website?
You know, it's something that it wasn't like it just came overnight. It was my wife and I had talked about this several times, and I remember in the last election, it was 2020,
Mm,
and I mean, I knew everybody I wanted to vote for. I went ahead and looked at the ballot beforehand, and I knew I did not want to vote for one person on the school board, but I
okay.
didn't know anything about the other two. I just
Right.
didn't. And there was
Right.
no way to get any information about them. I just didn't know. I just had no idea. And in the years prior, even in your election in 2016, I mean, I remember you because I remember your name. It's a unique name, but I didn't know anything about you. I didn't know
Right.
anything about the school board.
Yeah.
So
We actually
effectively,
we actually only had one, how to say, one kind of event we got to introduce us, but we never
mhm.
actually get into anything in terms like a debate, like to express our difference of view on education. So there's really not much information about people who's running for school board, like you
Yeah, there
said.
really isn't.
Yeah.
So that's what really prompted it. It was that, I just felt like I don't like voting for people that I'm giving you my yes vote when I vote,
Right.
right? It means I'm affirming I agree with your positions. And I just don't like doing that unless I know something about it. So after the election, I started looking at, kind of the results. And there were some things that kind of struck me that not so much. I live in Center Grove. So the Center Grove School Board, I wasn't surprised that the incumbent won, Rob Daniels.
Mm.
I wasn't really surprised that Amy Counts won. I mean, that wasn't surprising to me. The things that were surprising to me was that in Franklin, they had 3 seats available and only 3 people ran. In
Uh,
Greenwood, there were 2 seats available and only 2 people ran. And I'm like, okay, so you start looking at the election results across other counties, and it's a very similar story.
right, right.
And
Well, well,
and
kind of, in a way, the parents did not pay much attention to it
mhm,
because, well, school board basically is kind of like a volunteer work. Uh, yeah, you really don't get paid. You don't really get paid a lot. Uh,
no,
and like I know Center Grove School Board, you got about $2,000 per year, and
right.
that's it. And there's a lot of work actually you had to put on in. So it's more kind of like a volunteering work. So I think in the past, parents just said, "Okay, we appreciate, you know, you want to run for this, and so therefore, I mean, if you want to run, right, like a
Right.
volunteer, someone wants to do it, okay, you do it." But I think we didn't realize that how much influence and power the
Mhm.
school board have. Now, first of all, school board can decide on the superintendent,
Right.
and superintendent actually runs on the, you know, he's a CEO basically. He decide uh, uh, what kind of policy for the
Mm.
school, and so what we have seen, especially in the uh, like for me, like I never went to a school board meeting until this year. Uh, is that uh, because like I think just like other parents, Like we just say, okay, there is something going on, and why didn't the school board stop it?
Right.
And why the school board actually pushing it in terms of the ideology of critical race theory? Because it just looked like that's not true, right? It doesn't take a genius to recognize this is not what's happening in our community.
Right.
Because I mean, I grew up in this area. I have never experienced any kind of racism, and now you say that America is inherently racist, and that's just not true.
That is not true. Yeah, and I don't want my kids, being pushed into, either accepting that line of thinking and that lie, or I don't want them being mistreated because other people have bought into that ridiculous lie.
Right.
So, and you're right. I mean, you're touching on the important topic of what the role of the school board really is. And when I looked at it and said, I don't know who these people are. We need more information. There's no real way to get the information. There isn't any like town. Oh, I apologize. My phone's going off. Like there's no like town halls. There's no real way to get that information. And, they don't have any who's tracking voting records, et cetera. So no one was doing this work. So just decided that's what we were going to do. We were going to start doing that so we can inform the community what's going on. Because, you talked about the superintendent, and the superintendent, he is the one that is the CEO. I mean, he hires the administrative staff, and the administrative staff then puts forth the curriculum and all this. But so we have no control over who the superintendent is. We have no control over the administrative staff. We have no control over the curriculum. We have no control over what's told to teachers, except for the fact that we do, because the school board has to approve all these things.
Right, exactly.
And what in my research, what I'm kind of like figuring out is that the school boards are just rubber stamps. And to some degree, maybe they need to be in certain instances. So for example, Center Grove, there were 95 resolutions that were passed over the last 2 years. So all of last year and so far this year, it was 95 passed, 0 were rejected, which on the surface seems like, wait a minute, that seems like maybe a problem. But you start talking to someone like, Joe Hubbard, who's really great at communicating back with the community. And, he makes, a valid point about that and says a lot of what gets voted on in public is already negotiated in private before, right? So, and I think that's reasonable. And my response to that was just that perhaps maybe the 95 that passed should have passed, but perhaps there are things that you're not talking about that you should be talking about as a school board. And maybe if you listen to the community, not Joe in particular, but as a whole, if the board would listen to the community more, maybe there are other things that the community would like to hear. And that's where I think we really start having these important discussions about what's going on in our school systems. Because the last year, when you think about, what happened to liberal cities across the country that were on fire, riots and everything. I mean, that is 40 years of the education system summed up into a generation of people.
Right.
So you think about the kids that are sitting in the classrooms today, that's the future of our country.
Right.
So
exactly.
whether you have a child in the school system now or a grandchild, even if you don't, you have a vested interest in making sure that these kids are properly educated and that they're not going to hate America.
Right. Because when they grow up, once they got 18 years old, they can vote.
Right.
And their votes will affecting like all of us.
Right.
Yeah. So even we don't have kids in public school, like my kids growing up, but I still have a stake there, right? To make sure the kids are appropriately educated. And in the past, I was aware about their academics because, as you know, that Americans, especially math education, is so bad that a lot of kids just don't have that kind of skill to, to go to a good career. And now I think even worse, even a lot of people cannot even read. Now Center Group, I think Center Group, the I learn pass rate is about 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, as a district-wide average. So it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
They're
that's pretty bad.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, this is not just Center Grove, it's all over the state, but we don't hear they hire someone to actually take care of that. We hear them hire a DEI officer to
Right.
address this systematic racism, which is not
Mhm.
there. I mean,
Right. Exactly.
so that's kind of weird, and that's things I do not understand about those school board members. I mean, it where is their common sense? You look at something and say this is not true, right? So what's the name of your website?
Oh yeah, it's so we started a website. It's called School Board Audit. So it's www.schoolboardaudit.com. And you can also follow us. We have a Facebook page,
right.
Search School Board Audit, and we're there. And honestly, when we launched, we're only about a month old. I mean, we really did just decide we're going to go for this and just to see what happens. And our expectations were very low. We thought if we get outside of Johnson County, that would be pretty awesome. But I mean, it really took off a lot faster than we anticipated. Not that we're, having, this huge amount of, views or whatever and visitors, but from being just a small little unknown startup, 30 days ago to, what the results we're getting now, I'm really impressed with it. And we have 22 different school board candidates across the state that have at least expressed interest in running. Which is the other aspect of what we're really trying to promote. So not only do we want to show people, here's your existing school board, these are the policies that they're voting for or against, and showcase that so that when you go into a voting booth, the person's voting record. But at the same time, we have good people like you, Dr. Ping, that have decided to run for Center Grove school board positions, but also other candidates across the state. And they're doing the same thing. So we have a questionnaire that we ask them to fill out because we don't have a voting record to really go on. And then we will curate a page for the campaign for free. I mean, this is the best way we could think to help promote some new blood into the school board system.
Yeah, you really did a good job. I mean, and now you actually cover so many school districts. And have you been to school board meetings?
We really didn't get into school board meetings until we started this. I mean, we watched some, but we didn't physically go. But we were watching kind of not the live stream, but we would watch after the fact.
Right.
But and there is definitely good information out there. But as example, like the last school board meeting, I'm glad we were there because there were a lot of things said and done that did not get picked up on the video that the school district let out. Yes.
Well, so I thought that they need to record the whole thing. So actually,
so when Jack Russell adjourned the meeting, they no longer were having an official meeting, so they stopped the recording. I'm sure they were still recording, but they felt
they don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have to showcase it. And, there were Dr. Carol Cecil, who's fantastic, and Brittany Carroll, who's also fantastic. They were both speaking and just, the attitude towards both of them as they were, presenting what they were there to talk about. It just made it very clear that there are several members of that school board at Center Grove that they don't want to hear from the community. They just don't want to hear it.
So that's a Center Grove school board, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I think at one of the meetings, actually 3 board members walked out. Is that the one you went to?
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one we're talking about. Yeah, they all got up and walked out. They just, there was which is interesting to me because, Carmel Clay, we were able to, we had a lot of requests from people up in Hamilton County wanting to have so I was like, man, I'm getting so many requests. I'm just going to put everything aside and do this. So went ahead and put that together for them. And the Unify Carmel group really expressed a lot of positivity and a lot of love to what we did. So I'm looking and Carmel obviously has gotten a lot of, publicity because their school board kind of shut things down. They got walked out and made national, but Center Grove effectively did the exact same thing, except what's interesting is, Alvin Liu, who's a great guy. I mean, a wonderful, proponent of education and rights. you can see him on the video feed. He's there with several other parents, and they got up and left. But before they left, they had instructed everybody to put their masks on. Well, Alvin and several other people did not put masks on, and that's not why they got up and left. They got up and left because one of the parents got up and was, making a speech, when, I guess they weren't allowed to. So they adjourned and moved on, which is what Center Grove really should have done. They should have just said, okay, well, we require masks in the building, please mask up. And those who didn't mask up, you just let it go. You move on. We're adults. Mm-hmm. We don't abide by the Center Grove's dress code or anyone else's dress code.
Right.
And you could have resolved this whole thing by just letting it go and just having the meeting. But instead they forced it. So when Center Grove is becoming, more willing to shut things down over the mask than Carmel was, I mean, that's not a good place to be.
No. Yeah, and also this is what I've seen in different school board meetings. The mindset and the attitude of the school board members, that is appalling to me. Mm-hmm. It's like they are kind of like they are the boss, or you are just kind of they treated the parents as kind of like employees. Mm-hmm. And they are the bosses. So, which is the other way, should be other way around.
Yeah, it's a microcosm for what's going on, I think, in our whole country. It's really these elected officials, they get into these positions, they're supposed to represent the people. And in some cases, look, there's going to be counties and school districts where CRT is going to represent the values of the people that live in that community. And that's got to be okay. I mean, that has to be what it is. But you can look at the information and say the vast majority of counties in Indiana, that is not going to be what represents their community. And you look at Johnson County as a whole, and in the last election, just if you look at just straight ticket voting, it was 74% went GOP. And you look at the school boards and it's like, they're all leftists. I mean, not all of them, but I mean, most of them are leftists.
Yeah. I don't know about the Center Grove School Board, but I know school boards in general, in not just in Indiana, is that the teachers union are behind a lot of the candidates. They pick candidates to support them. Yeah, and I mean, just to me, just like I'm still kind of do not understand why they have this kind of mindset. They just think like, your parents don't know anything, and if you want to talk to me, you have to be on our terms. You had to only talk about this subject, and so far, I think is the only way the parents can communicate with the board is at the board meetings. Is that true from your perspective?
It really is. I mean, the way that we kind of got really involved with this is because we have two daughters, one of which graduated from Center Grove last year, and one is in middle school right now. And we've had some issues, and we've had to go as high as to Dr. Arkanoff, the superintendent, and we've included the school board on it. And what's been frustrating is that there hasn't been any response except for by one person, and that's Joe Hubbard. And that's how I got to know Joe, is because he was willing to communicate. So I actually did a records request, under Indiana's open door law. And I was able to get a document that was, several documents that were, I would say, 3 inches thick, mailed to my house. And 90% of it is Joe Hubbard responding back to parents. And there isn't any other board member that is responding to parents other than, I think there was 1 or 2 from Scott Alexander and maybe 1 or 2 from Amy Counts. But Rob Daniels, Jack Russell, I mean, the rest, all their communications were just forwards to, Dr. Arkanoff. But Joe Hubbard would take the time to actually respond.
Good. That's good. Yeah, I looked at their website, the Center Grove School Board. So basically, as a parent, they call that you have to follow the chain of command. That you have to talk to the teacher, and then from that talk to the administrator, and then go up. But to me, that just wrong, because we didn't elect teachers. We didn't elect the administrators. We elect the school board. So they should be accountable to us. We should have direct communication to them. But their mindset is that you have to follow the chain of command. They think they are above everybody else. It's just like that is wrong. But I'm glad that at least you have, what's his name?
Joe Hubbard.
Joe Hubbard, at least he actually waiting to talk to parents, which is actually not typical. Typically, you don't get any response from a school board.
That's correct.
Yeah, everything gets just forward to someone else. Yeah.
Yes, and I would agree. And Joe is he's definitely been the exception to the rule. And I think the evidence of that is in these emails. I mean, I got the emails from a period beginning in June 1st through September 9th, and you don't have during this period of time, and that's the reason I chose it. There was supposedly, this is all centered around the mask debate. There was supposedly just as many, if not more, emails pro-mask that were being sent in versus parents who were concerned about the mask and having mask choice.
Right.
And it's just another lie from this administration. The fact is that I have these documents, and they're absolutely, it's not even close. I mean, there might be 10 responses of pro-mask to, I couldn't even tell you how many that were wanting mask choice. And not to say anti-mask. I don't like that term, because I think a lot of us feel like we're not anti-mask. If you want to wear a mask, by all means do so.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care what you do.
Should be a choice, right?
Right, exactly. You can't force your choices onto us. Yeah.
And also in a way that if you want to put mask on students, and it's impractical. Impractical to enforce that, because they could just say that during the class, mask on, but during the after the bell, between they are going to different classrooms, you get people they are not really, they can take the mask off, or a lot of kids actually, they just pull mask down so they have the nose sticking out, right? And then you have lunch, and then you after school they are getting together, parties and all that. It's
right.
What's the point, right? They were going to, if someone gets sick, they're going to transmit.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's clearly about there certainly isn't for the folks that say this is all about science.
No, not at all.
It's not about science at all. It's about compliance.
Right.
Really
yeah. This is what kind of concerned me, because those kind of things were very typical in China when I grew up there. People knew that those policies does not make sense, but we just have to do it, right? Because the central government told us we have to do that. That shouldn't be the America. America should be like the choice by the people. But now we have this, and everybody has to do it, even though everybody think, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't really, you do not accomplish the goal.
Right.
It's still, like I said, it become like it's just the compliance, and that is wrong. That means it's un-American. I don't know how un-American that is.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. It's your story is interesting and very unique, and we just praise God that you were able to get out of the communism that you had to grow up in, and it's a remarkable story. But there's lessons that you understand and have at a much better and deeper level than anyone here could really appreciate. And I think it would be wise to listen to folks such as yourself that have been in communist countries, have come into the United States, and are warning people that, look, this is the path you're walking down, and this leads to totalitarianism. And
exactly. Yeah, there are other peoples like me, not just from China, and the
Right.
people from like Russia, from
Cuba.
Cuba, other communist countries, they all now because they experienced it, so they know how everything got started, right? Like any totalitarian government, they always started with the government telling people to do things that is in the interest of the people,
Right.
right? This is good
That's the
for you.
guys.
I mean, that's
Yes.
the beginning, right? That's the beginning of totalitarianism. Is once you get listen to that, complying to that, then they move on to. I mean, you get on a slippery slope, and that's what kind of always scare me about not just the wearing mask or taking vaccine. It's a mandate. Is you have a government to mandate, right? I mean, even our president ordering like private businesses to have the vaccine mandate. I mean,
Right.
that is unthinkable just a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, I recommend reading Atlas Shrugged if you're if you're thinking this is a good idea. Ayn Rand talks in great detail about this stuff, and
Yeah, because
Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged. I mean,
right.
Those principles were, and it's Orwellian with 1984. I mean, we're watching all these art imitate life kind of scenarios play out, and and bringing it back down to the school board, this is where you had school boards that before the last executive order from Governor Holcomb requiring these masks in lieu of quarantine. I mean, you had schools such as Greenwood, such as Clark Pleasant, that were accepting religious exemptions. You could just write it on a piece of paper and you were fine. You had in Mooresville a scenario where they were, they were creating a separation for the kids who were wearing masks and the kids who were not. And, I made this point at the school board meeting when we were kind of having this open dialogue. It wasn't on recorded by the school per se. There were other people in the audience that were recording, including my wife. And I made this point that, the fact that Mooresville, the state came in and told them that they could no longer do this. They had to follow the executive order. The people in Mooresville aren't clamoring for action from their school board on it, not because their school board actually stood up for them. Right. The school board said, we're not going to do this. We're going to listen to our people.
Right.
But that's not what happened at Center Grove. That's not what's happening at Carmel. That's not what's happening at Franklin, all these other school districts across the state. They're just not listening to the people that actually voted them in, wittingly or unwittingly, based on the information that they had about them. So we are really hoping to create an environment that people can know who they're voting for, that that people who want to run, who think, well, I have no idea how to market this or how to market myself. Joe Hubbard told me that he won his election spending $200 on yard signs. I think that's interesting. That was 2018.
Right.
In Carmel Clay, there was a woman.
I can pretty much spend that kind of money when I was around 2016, and they got like 3,456 votes.
Yeah,
but not enough, but I think
a significant chunk.
Yeah, and one of actually the current board members, he only got like a little bit more than 1,000. So it doesn't. It's not that costly to actually run for school board.
Yeah, it's really not. I mean, you can put as much into it as you want and get whatever result you can get out of it. But what I find interesting is that you were talking earlier about how the school boards don't pay much, and that's true. It really is effectively a volunteer position.
Right.
But in Carmel, there was one school board member that's $12,000 is what was spent to get them elected.
Wow.
$12,000. So the thing is that you have to, I think, at least give a moment's pause and wonder, for a position that's going to pay, depending on the school district, somewhere between $2,000 and $6,000 a year.
Right.
Why on earth would someone spend that much money? And then when you start getting into the campaign finance, because with that level of spend and donation, you have to fill out campaign finance.
Okay.
So I'm reading their report, and this is money that comes in from Virginia, from California. I mean, it's just interesting that this much is being pushed into this. So if it's not for a monetary gain, what else would be the reason, right? So I think people are waking up. I hope they're waking up. And at the end of the day, our position is we're going to put whatever your voting record is, we're going to put it out there. Whatever if you're running on a campaign where you're pro CRT, pro mask, pro whatever, or you're against these things, we want to let the community know, and the community can decide what is best for them.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to play the, just the, which obviously if you go and read the about us on our website, I mean, we started this because we were concerned about the wokeism that is going on in the classroom. I'm certainly not wanting to have, pro CRT candidates or, pro, transformative SEL board members. But I don't get to decide that by myself. I mean, that's a community thing. So the best thing we can do is just provide the information and let the community decide and sort it out from there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I especially next year, I think a lot of parents will be involved because I think many just woke up and to say, basically the trust has been betrayed.
Yes.
They trust the school board to do the right thing, but school board basically, I mean, we're talking about Johnson County, right? It's a very conservative county, but we have school board members. They are definitely not conservative.
Yes. And you look at what's going on in Clark Pleasant as an example. They, Dr. Spray is very vocal about, using the pronoun, and he's proud of the fact that he's, become very woke, and they're not shy about it.
Did he denounce his whiteness?
I don't know that. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, but I don't know that to be true.
I know one of the superintendent intendant did that. I think it's what to call that? Clark
Pleasant, yeah.
Clark Pleasant, yeah.
Yeah, that's Dr. Spray, and it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, he's very, very much into the, the belief that there's systemic racism and all this, and Clark Pleasant, they actually have a document. I mean, I'm going to post it up on the website. Clark Pleasant's going to be the next one that we launch, and that should be done. And by the time this comes out, it'll probably already be up on the website.
Oh, cool.
But there's some interesting stuff in there. They absolutely had a first reading and a second reading that on a policy that they approved before school started that said whatever pronoun you decide that you want to be, that's who you are. So if you're biologically a male and you say that you are a female, then you can use the female restroom, you can use the female locker room.
Wow.
And they will call you a she. I mean, it is outlined 100% on their website, and the board read it into the record twice, voted on it, and they all approved it.
So a boy can get into a girl's bathroom,
yes,
as long as he said he is a girl.
Yes,
that's it.
Wow. Whatever your preferred pronoun is, that's what they've decided to do.
Does that apply to teachers too?
Yeah, I believe it does.
So if a male teacher, if he claim he's a girl or woman, can she get into the girls' bathroom?
I believe so. Yeah.
Wow, it's just so crazy.
And this is why there was a lot of parents that pulled their kids out of Clark Pleasant, and I think there are definitely some lines in the sand for us as well as parents. I always felt like there's been a lot of talk lately about why would anyone keep their kid in public schools when they pull them out. My wife has been a stay-at-home mother for 17 years, and we made that decision early on because we thought that was going to be best for our family. And it's been fantastic. I mean, this has just been a great opportunity. We've been so blessed to be able to do that. And I've always said that our kids are immune to all this, and they are. I mean, we have rooted them in a foundation of Christ, and we have talked to them since they were very little about what the world is. And they're not going to be deceived by the lies of what's going on.
Right.
So it would not be hard for us to pull them out and homeschool, and that would be fine. No. But in doing so, we exit the fight, and we feel like, we want to fight not just for our kids, but we want to fight for our other kids, because there aren't parents that are as fortunate, or what their situations are just different. That they can't be as involved.
And also, we put money into it.
Yes.
right?
Sure.
So if the system is bad, and we are responsible for that because, we found it.
Right. That's true.
Right. So definitely don't give up that fight, man. They are trying to say, okay, if your kids are not in the school district, you have no voice here. That's not right.
It's really not I agree. I mean, that is a really backward way to approach
Right.
this. We're
And
all in this together.
yeah,
This is the future of our nation.
Right. I've been to a couple, school board meetings, and that's their mindset of the school board members is that if your kids are not in the school district, you cannot say anything.
Right.
Even though you are taxpayer in that district.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
they are quick to point it out. Like at the last board meeting, that there was a gentleman that doesn't have kids in the school system. He is homeschooling them. And as he was talking, the superintendent did make sure to, point that out. He's like, remind me, what your kids go to which school? And he's like, well, no, they don't. We homeschool. He goes, okay, yeah. He goes, you're fine. You can have your piece here because you live here and you have, you pay taxes or whatever.
Right.
I just want to make sure I understood that. No, you wanted to announce to everybody that he doesn't have kids. We're not.
Right. It's trying to kind of discredit it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes. I went to the Franklin school board meeting, and actually one of the audience stood up. I think he was a graduate from the school. The Franklin school. So basically, he's saying that if you don't like what the school's doing, you can leave. You can homeschool, you can pull your kids out, you can go homeschool, you can basically saying, if you don't like it, you shut up.
Yeah, okay.
Go somewhere else. That
vote
is,
with your feet. Yeah.
Not vote for it. It's like they have the attitude, like, this is what we're going to do. We don't care what you say. And if you don't like it, you go somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's, the perception of an 18-year-old, right? Because the reality is that, I can walk my kid into homeschool. I'm still paying taxes. I'm still funding.
Right. Exactly.
But you look at Carmel Clay is a great example of this. They have a $2 million shortfall because they had so many people that have pulled their kids out. So the result of that is the board had to vote to rescind teacher pay increases that were planned. So they went from a 4% increase that they were planning on doing down to 1.5%. So and that's who you're hurting.
Yeah, and I read a report. I think it's the Indy Star, and it didn't mention anything about the parents are not happy with the school. It's talking about, well, maybe there is a lot of parents cannot afford living in Carmel anymore. Things like that. Give other kind of excuses, but nowhere they actually talk about parents' concern about what's going on. It's you kind of like tells you that how the media actually lie. Purposely lie about it. We understand there is a bias, right?
Right.
Everybody has a bias, but it's so obvious there, and you do not report it. You don't say anything. It just like basically take. Basically the administrator lied about it, and the Indy Star just kind of repeat that lie
to
his readers. He's just like, wow.
And Kathy Giuliani, she made a nice write into the Daily Journal because, and I can't remember exactly what the phrasing was, but they had worded the events that happened at the Center Grove School Board meeting improperly. And she pointed out that, this is, you use a very specific type of phrasing to make it look a certain way, but that's not what was said. And that's, this is what was actually said.
Right.
And, they published it, but they didn't really do a retraction or anything, but that's just what happened. They misrepresent some facts.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I have some, I have a friend, and the Daily Journal just definitely don't want to hear the truth.
No, even down at Franklin, like Kim Monroe, she had that whole incident with they got the health department to sign off a notarized copy of this, that it's up to the school boards to decide. It's not up to the health department, the local health departments.
Right.
And then I can't remember this doctor's name, but he rescinds that, and says that he was felt coerced or whatever.
Frustrated.
And
frustrated is the word. Yeah.
Frustrated. Yeah. And Kim is like, I've got a recording of this, right?
Yeah.
So, and she contacts the Daily Journal, and they're like, well, if you have it, send it to us. But, they want to review it beforehand. And she's like, no, just, why don't you just interview me or whatever, and I'll play it. But they didn't want to do that. So
no, definitely not. Yeah. Wow. So now in the Johnson County area, what do you think is the most how say non-operating school board?
Oh man, that's a great question. I guess it's how would you define that? I think
like they just made this clear. I don't want to listen to you.
Yeah, I think Clark Pleasant is probably, when you compare the Johnson County School Board, Center Grove is actually pretty good. I mean, if it's the kind of the best of the worst kind of thing, in my opinion.
Right.
But because you do have some people like Joe Hubbard and Amy Counts who have demonstrated their willingness to listen and meet with the community.
Mm-hmm.
But you get like Clark Pleasant has actually, they've changed some of the phrasing of their philosophy. They've made it very clear that they're going to do whatever the administration wants them to do. They have voted for everything that the administration wants. There have been a couple no votes, which was interesting. They voted the current president and vice president of that school board. They voted no to add body cams to the Clark Pleasant Police Department, which I thought that was interesting. What body cams have demonstrated to be a very effective and useful tool. I'm surprised you wouldn't want that, but I don't know. I'll maybe have to dig into that a little bit more. But I think from if their stated goal, like this is what I said about Barack Obama, right? He said that he wanted to fundamentally change America, and he wasn't a failure in that. I mean, I didn't agree with how he wanted to change America, but he absolutely changed America. He was very honest with what he's doing. I think Clark Pleasant is kind of doing the same thing. They're very honest about the fact that they want to create this woke environment, and they're going forward and doing it. But I think the community is definitely not being represented or served. So hopefully there'll be some good folks that run.
Right. Yeah. Is there any way to record the school board?
Sure. I mean, it's a public meeting. So there's a couple of different things. I mean, they, most of them do have videos on the website, just their school board websites.
Right.
And in fact, our school board audit website itself, if you go to a specific district, the first thing you'll see is a picture of the school and the name of the school. And then below that, there'll be a link to the minutes in the archives for each of these schools. And a lot of times there's a video there. But if you decide you want to video it yourself, I mean, there's no reason you can't. My wife took some really great video. Michael Clark was there. He took some good video. But it's a public meeting, so you can absolutely do that.
Right. I mean, not just sorry. That's good. I mean, that's actually something I want to know. But I meant is that like not just recording, but record them. Like say,
recall. Oh, okay.
We don't like them. Well, I mean, I know some states can do, but I somehow heard not in this state.
No, Indiana. It's interesting you're asking that because I was looking at that last night, and the law on the book says that you can recall any elected official based off of the Indiana law, but unfortunately, there isn't an Indiana law that allows for recall. So you cannot recall any elected officials in the state of Indiana.
Wow.
Other states you can, but until the congressmen and senators, until they pass something that will go into law in the state, there's no recourse for us. We can't do a recall. You can still impeach, but you can't do a recall.
Oh, okay. So how does the impeachment go? What's that process?
You would have to demonstrate that they were derelict in their duties or unfit or had committed some type of crime, that was, perpetrated while they were in office.
Oh, okay.
It's a pretty high bar.
Right. Definitely you cannot impeach them because they are trying to push, critical race theory or something like that.
Right. Yeah, you really can. I mean, I mean, effectively what happens is the superintendent has his administration and they go out and they get, what is in effect like a bid for curriculum. And then they take it back to the board and the board looks at it and then they approve the textbooks and the materials. And it would be great if they would push back. And we don't know because we're not privy to the private meetings. There might be some pushback, but if you look at the timelines and when this stuff is presented versus when it's, approved, I don't know that there's a lot of time available,
for them to, right.
To have any dialogue with that.
But have they actually, do you know any school board has sought input from the parents in terms of curriculums? Because the parent has the right to check the curriculums.
I don't know of any that have. In fact, it is, I'm friends with someone who used to be the superintendent at Clark Pleasant, and she's been fantastic and kind of given us some insights into what goes on. And it is really almost impossible to get schools to put their curriculum out there and open, and they should. I mean, there's no reason that you can't have the curriculum. They just don't want to share it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I think with Center Grove, to their credit and to the credit of the parents, they stood up and said, we don't like what is happening with this SEL because it's no longer just SEL. Now it's this inserting CRT into it. Right. And it did force their hand to put the SEL program out on, out on the website. So if you go to Center Grove's school page, you can actually look at what is going to be taught from an SEL perspective.
Okay.
But that's really the only curriculum items out there right now.
Can parents opt out on that?
They cannot opt out in the traditional sense. You can go and pick up your kid and it's a 45-minute lesson. So you can take your kid out of school for 45 minutes. You have to be responsible to pick them up and bring them back. And it does count as an absence.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. As an unexcused absence. So, which I think is, I think it's rather ridiculous. I mean, you could, you should be able to opt in, opt out, or,
well, I mean, this is not, how to say, first of all, it's not the core, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a core subject,
right?
And second of all, there's different views, opinions on that, and so, like, you would think parents should have the right to pick and choose on those kind of things, but no. But the other things I'm really concerned. When I heard about SEL is because the proponent of SEL, they think this not just a subject. This is the framework. This is, it's permeates on every subject taught in school. So it's kind of like ideology or education philosophy. It's something like it's I just cannot sing a good word right now. It's just like it sounds like something wrong. I mean, this is definitely all the red flags comes up is when you think about something that's basically you fundamentally change the education system through SEL, and I want to know what you are trying to change it to before actually my kids actually being taught on those kind of things. But parents has no input on that.
They really don't. And the term transformative SEL is how how we really should separate it, because there are several teachers that have talked about SEL being this really great thing, and they've been doing it for years and decades. And I mean, to some degree, what they're talking about is different than the transformative SEL of today. I mean, back in the day, you're talking about social and emotional learning. You're talking about, being able to process to some degree, process and understand other people's feelings. Whereas now it's not what it's about. It's more about accepting things, that, are untrue at the end of the
Right,
day,
right,
right?
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and it's, body scan meditation. I mean, it's things like this. I mean, why are you teaching that? And in the meantime, you look at what the actual results are of the kids that are graduating and the test scores. I mean, all the benchmark measurements are way down.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, yeah,
maybe we stop spending so much time trying to deal with these, these safe spaces and these emotions, and start just focusing on
yeah,
the
exactly. I mean,
important things.
yeah, they are trying to say, okay, SEL was such a great thing. It's been there, like you say, for about more than 20 years. But there isn't, and they are trying to kind of sell that as a way they can help kids to improve the academics and all that. But as you point out, there is no any improvement in terms, test scores or academics, and nothing. So then what does that accomplish? And then it does become something different now, because the organization which is behind SEL is, I think, what's the synonym? Castle or something like that.
Oh yeah, Castle.
Castle, yeah. And now they actually changed the definition, and that became actually a leverage to bring in social justice and bring in all that. So I mean, now they are, I guess, they finally kind of showed their hands, and this is what they are trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And they've been accomplishing a lot of it. I mean, when you look at it, and when you say, okay, well, why did we have rioting last year? It's because you spent 20 years teaching kids about their emotions and how they really are entitled to feel however they want to feel about whatever they want to feel about, and they can act in the way that they want. There's no consequence.
Right. I mean,
that's just not reality.
No, that's actually the wrong way of. I mean, it's actually against what they are trying to promote, right? Is SEL supposed to teach kids how to handle their emotions, how to respect other people, and how to, build a relationship. At least that's what they say as the goal of SEL. But in reality, in practice, it's just opposite. It's like if someone's feeling got hurt, then you are the bad guy, even though you might speak the truth. Now, if someone said they are a girl and you say, no, you're a boy, then you are the bad guy.
Right.
Because you hurt his feeling, his emotions.
Yes.
It's like, oh, this, yeah.
Yeah. And so you have a generation that accepts masks without asking any questions. You have a generation that accepts that, Jen Psaki the other day was saying that, federal law supersedes state and local laws.
They're just totally wrong.
And there's a huge fallacy in that with, the 10th and 14th Amendments. But then, on top of that, there's not even a law to talk about. You're literally talking about something that you're saying a law from the federal government supersedes the law of the state, but there's no law. I mean, you haven't enacted a single law to deal with, vaccine mandates. That's so you're literally talking about a hypothetical situation, and you're saying it all wrong. But that there are people that, me in my 40s, I understand that. But these kids in their 20s, they've been taught to just accept everything that the government.
Right. I mean, and also that's how their worldview, because they think the federal government is over all the state government, which is the case in totalitarian government. You have the central government controls the provincial government, right? That's what happened in China. The central government says something, the provincial government has to do it, and then the provincial government push it down to local communities. But this is the opposite of what our country is, and the principles that we are. The country was founded on. But most kids nowadays, they don't know that.
They're not taught that. History is, this revisionist version of history, and they're just not getting, the accurate and I think, I don't fault teachers, and most teachers. I think most teachers are really set out to do a good job, and they really love these kids, and they're really dedicated. I think they're grossly underpaid. And I think, we could probably trim 70% of the administrative staff, take that money and then allocate it evenly across all the teachers. But I think they are so bombarded with things that they have to teach in these curriculums that are beyond the scope of, and history is a good example of this. I mean, you have to end up teaching so many other things. You don't have time to do actual history. And
right. Well, I mean, I
problematic.
I have taught in a school for 7 years, so I understand. I mean, the administrations has a lot of power on what you can teach or you cannot teach. So if they tell you to do that, then you have to do it. Otherwise, you get fired, right? Or they just don't renew your contract, and then it's hard for you to find the next teaching job because they will talk to your principal and all that, and that they won't give you a good recommendation. Right. So it's really and there's definitely a lot of pressure on the teachers that if they don't follow, whatever the policies that the school trying to implement, and like you mentioned that now they have to do a lot of other things which they don't have much time to really teach academics. There is very, very so little is taught in school right now. It's just like beyond belief. And another thing is a lot of parents probably not aware is that the grade inflation is everywhere. And the kids nowadays, when they got B's and A's, doesn't mean they have learned anything. Right. They can easily get B's and A's without really understand what's going on. And so they forgot. I mean, they once they get the credit for that course, then they forgot everything about it. Or maybe even worse, they probably hate it. So they it's kind of ruin their life. But that's what's going on right now in schools. So parents really need to know what is.
And I think we were talking earlier about pulling your kid out, doing homeschool, and the reasons why we're not doing that. But in all honesty, we have been homeschooling our kids, and I think most parents, do homeschool more than they realize. That I used to call it deprogramming them when they would get home from school, ask them what's going on, what they learn, sit down and read the textbooks with them, help them with their homework, and that gives you the opportunity to correct the record. And my oldest daughter, I mean, Center Grove offers a lot of really amazing programs, and she graduated high school with 74 college credits. So she had an associate's degree. As an 18-year-old, she got an amazing scholarship to go down to Franklin, and she's doing really well there. And she's already got junior status, so she'll have her undergrad degree in less than 2 years. I mean, it's opened a lot of doors for her.
Right.
And Franklin is, it's obviously, it's it's a private college experience, not a high school or whatever. So it's not public education, but I mean, very liberal. And she's been forged in fire, and she's been able to stand her ground. And it's been very interesting to hear some of the conversations that she's having. And even her most leftist professor is showing her a lot of respect for standing up for her values. And
very good.
And that's what we need. We need more of that. And that's not going to happen if you're, passively allowing the public school system to what you're talking about, inflating grades, just to graduate your kids and they don't learn anything.
Right.
You have to be involved. And
definitely.
You have to do homeschooling. So if it's not officially homeschooling, you're still homeschooling, because you gotta teach them right, wrong. You gotta, correct the record, and you got to make sure if the things are missing in the curriculum, that you're gonna have to fill in the gap.
Yeah, and also help them to realize that what is behind all those things, what's the ideology behind it, and why they look at things this way, and whether or not, have the kids. I mean, you did a great job of with your kids, is help them to have this critical thinking.
Yes.
To have to actually be able to stand on their ground, to say, okay, this is what I believe, and right, and I think I do not agree with you because this, That is very important because right now, I think in school and schooling in general is, in a way, is basically indoctrination. So there's not much room for the kids to, have a debate or have a different point of view. But as parents, we definitely want our kids to have that. And yeah, well, thank you very much for what you are doing. And so your website is schoolaudit.com, right?
School board audit.
Schoolboardaudit.com, and there's tons of informations there, and so many different school districts. So you can just go there and click each school district, and you can see, especially the voting record of the current school board.
Yeah, I mean, the long-term goal is between, now and next election, we want to make sure we're going to go for every school district in the state. That's the lofty goal. We hope to get there. But we want to have the board members, who's up for election, what their previous election results were. And we want to have their voting records for at least the last 12 months, if not 24 months. And then we also want to make sure that we're promoting good candidates and that everyone who is interested in running is on the website as well, and what their positions are, so that when people go into the voting booth in November, they can say, if they do the research beforehand or whether they're just, walking in, getting ready to, to make a vote, they've got an opportunity to sit down and say, here it is, So in a clear, concise manner, we just want to make sure we're presenting that to everyone.
That's great. And do you have a plan to kind of hold some kind of open forums?
Yeah, we really would like to. I mean, we've kicked around some ideas. I think we've got some friends who are willing to let us utilize some of their spaces, their, small business owners, to allow for the candidates to come forward and have like a town hall style debate where it's a microphone and, someone walks around and asks, holds a mic and you can ask questions.
Exactly.
And it's, something there's been moderated debates, previously with school board, but it's always, here's the format, here's the questions, you have time to, and what I think really needs to happen is that town hall style, off the cuff, where you have to give an answer,
Exactly. Yeah. So when I was running for Snow Grove School Board, we only had one time. So basically, it's more kind of introduce us. There was no debate. So. And
I don't think they want debate. I think they really want just, again, compliance. The administration wants this, approve it so we can move on with our day. And I think that's, contrary to what the people in the voting blocks really want. I think they want more information. I think they want people to stand up and be a hedge against this indoctrination that's happening in our curriculum. And so I think it's going to be important. I don't think that the school board members themselves, like this, for example, Scott Alexander, Joe Hubbard, and Jack Russell, all three of those guys are up for re-election. So the next election, there's 3 seats at hand. If they decide, I think Joe Hubbard would absolutely go. I'm not sure Scott, and he might. I highly doubt Jack would actually go to a town hall meeting in that format, but I think that's okay. I think if the candidates are there, that's enough, and we can
by not showing up, that itself send a message.
Absolutely, agreed.
So that's wonderful that you are going to do that. And just my last question: can anyone access to their what they said during those votings, like the school, the superintendent proposed something and the school board going to debate? Is that information public?
There is, depending on the school district, some districts have more information about it, but even the most information you get, it's not really, that detail's not there. It really isn't. So the things that you see, if you go out to the website, you can scroll and there's a link to go to those minutes. But you can kind of get an idea of what's happening, but there just isn't a lot of detail behind it. So it's more just high level.
So it's just like, yes, this one vote yes, this one vote for no.
Yeah, and even in some cases, the law says they have to put these minutes out. This is why they do it.
Right.
And some school districts, and I will give Clark Pleasant a lot of credit for this, they do a very good job of detailing out they link the policies. Center Grove does a pretty good job too. But there are some like Greenwood. I mean, it is very minimal, and they don't even break out who voted what. They just say 5 yays, 0 nays.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So, I mean, the work that we're doing here, it's a labor of love, no doubt about it, because
right.
it's taking a lot of my time, and it's a lot of research to put all this together. And, you know, I have a demanding full-time job that I have to, and, you know, husband, a father,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
so
exactly.
there's a lot of things on my plate. So I'm doing my best to get through all this as quickly as possible.
Wow.
The best way you can help is to share,
right.
and, you know, we got to get this in as many hands as possible. Part of that's going to be, we have to market, which means that we need money. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want us to help out in your community, we're going to need some kind of donations. My wife and I, we agreed to fund the Center Grove theme because we're involved with that. But beyond that, I mean, if you want school board audit to be you know, an influencer or something in your district, then, you know, make a donation. I mean, $2, anything.
Right.
You know,
you have a donation button right on your website. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I mean, I really appreciate what you're doing, and I learned a lot from you. So I hope that our audience will. I mean, pretty sure our audience will learn a lot from you too. But yeah, I hope that they will share and get the message out. And what you are doing is amazing.
Well,
I hope
thank you, Dr. Ping. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I appreciate those kind words. And I mean, really, what we're doing, I mean, we're trying to help, but ultimately, what you're doing is much larger because you're actually stepping up and running for school board, and that's a big commitment, and that's you know, admirable. And you've got my vote for sure.
Thank you.
No question.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, like this is our fight, right? I mean, every generation has their fight for freedom, and this is our fight for freedom, so that we can talk later on. Our kids can live free, right? We can tell them that we did this. We actually stood up for them.
Yes.
Otherwise, otherwise, the other alternative just unthinkable to me. I mean, right? I mean, how can you face your kids and in the future and say, well, I was just too busy.
Right. Yeah. Not me. I certainly can't. So
right.
Let it be in our time.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Ping.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.